Welcome, boys and girls. It's Halloween time, and this is Chip Kachko. Shaf here, per usual. This is my favorite time of the year. Love fall. Just the change of the seasons and Halloween. Horror's my game, son. So, anyway, today I wanted to talk about something that's a little Halloween themed. A game called Visage. It was actually Kickstarted. I was one of the people that did actually help kickstart it. It did get greenlit. It took them, I'd say, like 2 to 3 years to finish it. But it's basically, I mean, they advertised it as like a spiritual successor to PT, which was the game that Konami released with Kojima and Guillermo del Toro famously, and then it got pulled because of the fallout between Kojima and Konami. But that's water under the bridge. Shit, it sounds like that they're even going to team up. They made amends. There's some rumblings that they're bringing back Silent Hill anyway. So anyway, I thought this would be a decent time to do this. And, so anyway, they based it kind of on that. There's a lot of games that have kind of followed that sense. Outlast is one of them. Layers of Fear, which I did actually play. Outlast, I played the first game. And did not play the second one. Just don't find hillbillies to be frightening. I've said that before in my previous videos. Just because they're just too human to me. It's not scary enough, even if they are sadistic. But anyway, so with this, it was basically done by two guys. I think they're from Montreal, so brothers from the north. This game is basically, you're playing somebody who's broken. Right off the gate, you're introduced to a clip where it's basically a guy loading a gun with 3 family members strapped to a chair, and taped up and everything so they can't talk, and he slowly goes through them all, shooting them in the head. So you get it's a very real game. It just gut punches you right out of the gate. Stereotypical, horror game with this kind of genre. Is it, of course, following PT, it takes place in a house. And that's like the main hub, and the house does transform. There is like 4 chapters, give or take. I wouldn't say there's 3 for sure, but if you fulfill certain parts of the game, there's kind of a 4th chapter that's somewhat unlocked. I guess really the 4th chapter is always unlocked despite whatever good or bad ending that you get. Let's dive into this bitch. First, the story. The story here is basically you're playing a man, kind of disembodied. You're roaming around the house. You're in this house. It looks like it was well lived with a family. You are playing a guy that you eventually find out his name is Dwayne. And I'll leave it at that. I'm going to try to keep spoilers out of this as much as humanly possible. So I don't really want to dive too much into it, but he's got a young son and a daughter. And basically it seems like, when you continue playing the game, you end up finding out, and I don't really think this is much of a spoiler, but you're essentially reliving experiences of people that have previously lived in that home. And, just kind of like these horrible things that happen. And it seems to be this house. This house kind of drives certain people mad. And, there's 3 chapters. There's Lucy's chapter, which is a young girl. There's Dolores, which is a middle-aged woman, perhaps. I don't know. She looks rough. But she had a kid, a baby, so she can't be that old. But and then there's Raken. I think it's Raken or Raken. I don't know. It's Rakan. I don't know. It was never really spoken. I think it was Raken, actually. Actually, it was spoken in one of the clips. But who's like an adult male, younger, maybe late to early 30s, late 20s, early 30s range. But anyway, you what's kind of cool is you actually get to choose your chapters and how you want to play them, which is kind of neat. The game does kind of actually ramp up the difficulty depending on which one you start with. So like if you start with the first one, that'll be the easier one, and then as you continue on, it kind of goes harder. I did them in Lucy's chapter first, which is the young girl, then Raken, and then I did Dolores. I say Dolores for last, mostly because I had the most difficulty with her chapter when I kind of did it without a walkthrough or anything when the game first came out, like a year ago. And but just found it the hardest just because there's so many branching segments, and if you do them out of order, it really holds you back. So you know, I kind of stopped, and when I went to go do my recent complete playthrough that I wanted to do for this video, I started with Lucy's, mostly because I found like that one kind of sounded a little more creepy, even just because there's a supernatural element to it more so than the other stories, which I like supernatural. That's more of my wheelhouse. It frightens me more, I should say. But you know, the story's good. You know, like I said, if you do collect all these certain items, which is the VHS tapes in the game, you unlock Dwayne's story, more or less, and you kind of find out about his family. And you know, it's neat. Like the thing that's cool is like the house evolves with each story completion, chapter completion, I should say. And like black splotches of the wall get more. There's these all black, almost ink-like skinned humans that walk around every once in a while. Like if you take too long inside the house between chapters, they'll come alive and kind of stalk you, but they can't hurt you, which was kind of neat. Was unexpected. And that's another thing. They kind of do like the Sanity Meter kind of a thing, sort of a la, you know, Eternal, or what was it? Eternal Darkness, excuse me. That was for the GameCube. So, you know, obviously you got to keep your sanity low. If it gets too high, generally the game kind of kills you, from my experience. So there's that. But anyway, so that's, you got to keep the sanity meter up, so I'll keep it there for the story. You do find out, once you get everything, there's the good ending and the bad ending. You know, basically you're at a crossroads, and you know, things happen, and you have a choice to do one thing or the other. And the other thing is far more involved, let me put it that way. But you know, so anyway, we'll move on to the gameplay itself then. With the gameplay, it's very, you know, basic. Like I said, it's you know, a la PT, Layers of Fear, or Outlast. It's, you know, you're seeing it through the person's eyes. Your source of light is either a lighter, a Zippo style lighter, or candles. Later on, you do get a camera that the flash constantly goes on, which is one of the most, like, I don't know, unnerving things for me. It's just, it's so creepy. I don't know why, just having to, like, the whine of the flash warming up, and when it finally does, you just basically get a strobe effect of what's there, and then it's gone, you know? So that's pretty cool. Thankfully, you don't use that really all that much outside of Lucy's chapter, thank God. You know, but there's stuff that you do find later, like a flashlight, but unfortunately you don't get to keep it, and things like that. So each chapter kind of has its own gimmick. Lucy's is the camera, Raken's, yeah, his is the flashlight, and then Dolores is just plain up, straight up, like candles and lighters. So that's pretty cool. You know, I touched on the sanity meter. That was something that was pretty cool in my experience. There was a part in the game, so the game kind of is randomly generated, and in my particular playthrough, the power was cut right in the middle of Dolores's chapter, which I was finishing last, and it was just like I had to actually go back to a previous save file and load it up because I just got stuck. It was just so difficult to get where I needed to go without getting killed. Because everything was in complete darkness, and where I was inside of the house in relation to where I needed to go, I had to go through these portals, to reach the part where I could finally reach the breaker box, and I just kept on dying. But it was cool in the way because each time I died, it was something different, which was very neat. There was the one, I think I do have a video clip of it, but I won't show it just because I don't want to give it away too much, but where you basically get inside of a room, everything completely darkens out, and all you can see is your lighter, basically. And out of nowhere, a hand comes straight out of the darkness and points. And I won't give away like what actually happens, but it's very cool. There's a lot of elements with opening up drawers. You constantly have to look for things. It's a very where the fuck do I go kind of a thing. This game is definitely probably one of those that requires a walkthrough. That might turn some people off, take it or leave it. I've never been one opposed to that, honestly. For me, even it kind of helps move things along. I don't like being stuck for very long because I don't have enough time. I'm an adult, I have things that I gotta do. So, I'm not really objective to doing that. I mean, Silent Hill was one that was kind of notorious for, what the fuck do I do kind of a thing. It was very, Silent Hill's kind of a different story. I think in that it was more, puzzle based and like determining what you needed to do based on things that were written and things like that. Whereas with this one, it's more just very vague. There's a moment where you would have had no idea that you would have to go up to these picture frames and make them fall off the wall. And behind one of them is a hole in the wall, and behind the hole in the wall, there's the answer to a puzzle later in the game. And I didn't really know that, and it was like without really a guide of any kind, I would have never known what the fuck to do. And that was one spot where I did do that. Some things, I would say Dolores's chapter is a little more puzzly. Lucy's comes in close. Hers is more brutal. Honestly, I found Lucy's to be probably the most frightening, just because, I don't know, maybe I find young little girls really creepy, and then there's the thing that's following her and telling her what to do, which is this gigantic cloaked thing with long fucking claws, which you see, quite a bit. Lucy is mostly there for shock factor and scare factor. Anyway, there's good things with that. One thing that's kind of arduous is opening all the drawers, figuring out what you can grab. There is inventory management in this, which I think is kind of cool. It's pretty basic, it's solid. I think you have 5 total slots for inventory of things that you can hold that can be used, like candles, lighters, pills that help with your insanity. And I think that was really it. But the other thing is you do have key item slots, which is almost unlimited. So you do have that, but you can only carry so many pills, candles, and lighters. And you can also, like when you pick up the camera and stuff like that, it takes up one of those slots that you hold. So, but it's basically like usable items in game. And anyway, pretty solid. The things with the villains or the entities coming after you, each one's different. Each one's either supernatural or it's a person. Lucy's is really the only one that is kind of supernatural. The other ones are more based on a person, and the big bad in their chapters are in fact the person. It's Reagan and Dolores. So, it's neat in that way. There's a lot of things where, you're going through stuff. If you're taking too long, the game does kind of nudge you along by making the enemies come after you or certain things happen. But there's some cool things. One of the things I ended up finding was, I was like between chapters or trying to find something in a chapter. And I went through the kitchen, and then all of a sudden, all the appliances came alive and started talking to one another, which I thought was pretty cool, like a little tongue-in-cheek. But, things like that. There's much more frightening things, much more like what the fuck is going to happen, what is happening kind of stuff, which is kind of cool. Big fan of that. And but yeah, overall the gameplay is pretty solid. Like I said, it's definitely a walkthrough game. You're kind of gonna have a hard time figuring out what to do in certain scenarios, and if you want to collect everything, of course, then you'll definitely want to pick up a guide somewhere. Good stuff overall with the gameplay. With the graphics, I played it on PS4. That's the one I requested. I should have probably did PC, just because over time I could keep on playing it and it's not just stuck on my PS4, but it is what it is. Graphically, it's fine. It holds up. Is it like, oh my god, like really above and beyond great graphics? No, I'd say it's better than average, pretty good. Everything has decent detail. There's certain things where you can tell, like the mugs are kind of bland and stuff like that. I mean, you could literally pick up almost everything. So, they're with the interactivity, it's pretty neat. But graphically, it's pretty awesome. I mean, the bad things that you come across later in the game are pretty haunting, honestly. Especially for me, was Dolores's, just because hers is more like body horror, because it has to do with childbirth and the womb and stuff like that. So there's a lot of that in it. So it's pretty graphic in that regard. But the other one is Lucy, poor Lucy. It's a poor girl that loses her mind and ends up, befriending a horrible entity who basically tells her to start killing things. And the way she dies is just god-awful, which you witness, unfortunately. So I will say, if you're a person that's squeamish, this game might kind of upset you a little bit. It's very dark and evil. Let me put it that way. It's, if you're a fan of the Silent Hill series, this definitely kind of follows that trend where, I feel like maybe Resident Evil and stuff like that kind of has like the Japanese lightheartedness to it, in a certain regard, the campy lines and stuff like that, whereas this is not campy. This is just brutal, straight brutal. Graphically, great stuff. I mean, my only complaints is maybe Dolores a little bit because I can't even describe her. She looks like a methed out, like, homeless person. But she's a paranoid schizophrenic in it. There's that. Like her hair is patchy and stuff, and certain things with that I was kind of but graphically there's some cool stuff. There's a lot of shit where it plays with you, where you'll walk by something and you'll be like, wait a minute, there's something different, and you'll look back at it and there is something different, and then you look away and then look back again and then it's back to normal. That kind of stuff has always been really cool to me. Very supernatural kind of freakouts sort of deals. Very good in that regard. So graphically, decent, B+. I'd say B+. For a small studio with just two guys, they nailed it. And then finally we get to sound, which for a game like this is highly important. And I will say the sound in this is dynamite, baby. Fucking A, man. Like, I mean, there were moments that you were just kind of like, what the fuck? And just like, having to really, steel yourself, because it just, you'll hear whispering in the background, like Lucy or Dolores. Raken's mostly yelling all the time because he's just manic. But, his story was probably my least favorite out of all of them. The other two, they kind of use like the surround sound. Like, I highly recommend playing this game with headphones. I have a 7.1 surround sound. It sounded good in it. However, I did notice the headphones did kind of bring out like some lower level noises and stuff like that, a little more so, which was pretty neat. I mean, I played through the game via surround sound, and then I played it for this playthrough with the headphones on, and I could definitely see a difference. So highly recommend playing with headphones. You know, there's not really any music to speak of. I don't remember any. You know, it's mostly just all about the atmosphere of where you're at and the background noises and like footsteps inside the house and things, you know, sliding or moving or falling and breaking and, you know, things of that nature, or water droplets. You know, just very eerie. They nailed it, you know. I mean, when you're being pursued by one of the enemies, you could definitely fucking hear them wherever you are compared to where they're at. They did really well with that. So if you ever played like, you know, Alien, Isolation, and things of that regard, like it did very well with it. You know, it's really good, really good. But I don't want to keep this too long. I want to keep it kind of short and concise. You know, overall, I would say if you're a fan of PT style games, survival horror, you know, layers of fear or anything else of that nature where it's first person, you know, searching around, finding what you need kind of stuff, then this will definitely be your game to get. I think it's pretty cheap, but it's a decent playthrough. The game is kind of short. I would say, you know, a fan of horror and PT style, get it. It's worth a shot. I would say it's better than Layers of Fear, in my opinion. You know, but not as scary as PT or as good as PT. Definitely not. Outlast, I would say, is a better story overall. Experience-wise, I would say, like for the horror aspect, Visage probably beats Outlast. It's kind of freaky. There's a lot of stuff that really kind of pushed me back in my seat when it happened. You know, you're just like, what the fuck? Like, you know, that to me, that's a staple of a good horror game. If it just kind of makes you reel back and try to get away from what's happening on the screen. I mean, that's probably the height of my scare now. I'm kind of desensitized. But I don't scream or anything. So, but yeah, you know, like I said, this game's probably a B, a solid B plus for me. It's good. It's worthwhile. It's fairly cheap for what it is. You know, it'll freak you out 1,000%. I mean, there were points where I was just kind of like my heart was pounding after, you know, the event happened. So, highly recommend the game. You know, guys, sorry, but this is probably going to be our only Halloween video. Unfortunately, this month has been crazy, but more to come. We're going to be doing, unfortunately, kind of a lot of separated things just because I've been busy with life, new career, and 2 weddings, and then Grim has a wedding himself. So, he is getting married. He's hitched. So, game over, ladies. But yeah, so more to come. November we'll pick it back up again, I promise. But hope you guys are all doing well, and happy Halloween.